Today, we're going to talk about, first of all, it's a new Torah portion, Torah reading called Naso. And it happens to be the longest Torah portion in the whole Torah. Longest Torah portion in the whole Torah. And it has in it, among other things, which we'll talk about, I hope, in the coming days. First of all, it has the blessing of the Kohanim that they bless. And then it has the whole weird commandment of the Sotah. The Sotah, the lady that her husband suspects that she is, how do you say, having extramarital affairs, whatever it's called. He suspects, he's not sure. They take her to the Holy Temple and make her drink this water. And then there's also the commandment of the Nazir. Nazir is a person, man or woman, that they take on themselves the obligation not to drink wine or grapes, or to keep wine, or to not to defile themselves for debt, and to not to cut their hair. I'll just turn off the thing if you don't mind. Where is this? Here we go. There we go. Good. All right. So, but first of all, let's go back in the order that all these things appear. First of all, it talks about Parshas Naso. Naso means to count, or to elevate, or to appoint the family of Gershon. The family of Gershon. Now, as you remember, or if you don't remember, well, I'll remind you. Gershon. He was one of the three families of the Levites. The Levites camped over here. This is when they were camping in the desert. So here was the Tabernacle. And here's the Holy of Holies. Here's the entrance. Entrance is from here. Let's see, maybe I'll use my fire pointer. Oh, this is the entrance over here. Okay. And Gershon was camped over here. Gershon was camped over here on the west side, because that's close to the Holy of Holies. And so that's where Gershon was. And we have, and the entrance, this is the entrance of the tabernacle, was Yehuda, and there was Moses and Aaron were camped there. This was Yehuda, Moses, Aaron. And here we had Kahat. This is Ephraim, right? So Ephraim is camped over. This is the camp of Ephraim. Ephraim, Benjamin, and Moshe, and Manasseh. That's where they're camped. This is right near Gershon. Okay, last week, we talked at the end of last week's portion, which we didn't get a chance to do that in class. But we talked about what was the job of Kahat. And how Kahat, they had the hardest and most important, if you want to call it, of the carrying jobs, right? When the Jews moved in the desert, so they took apart the altar, they took apart the tabernacle, they took it apart and they carried it. They carried it from one place to the other. So we're going to see that Gershon, he had the job to carry all these curtains that are over here. And also these curtains that cover over, because it wasn't a really roof, that covered over the top. We'll see that there was 10 curtains, 11 curtains. Then there was curtains on top of those curtains, which were made from the skin of some sort of tachash, whatever the tachash was, nobody knows what it is anyway, and ram skins on the top. That was the job of Gershon. The job of Kahat was all of the vessels that are in the inside. There was all the vessels. Now, how exactly did they carry it? I mean, no one was supposed to touch the ark, the holy ark. So how did they touch? So it says that the Kohanim, they would go in, and I want to learn that today. The Kohanim, which the Kohanim was basically just Aaron and his sons. That's all the Kohanim there were only three of them. They would take off the veil between the holy and the holies. They would go in and cover over the ark. And then they would put something over that also, and they would carry it. And then they would put also a veil over the menorah and a veil over the showbread and another veil over the small golden altar that they used for making the burning the incense. And then this picture is missing. There should be out here. There should be the big altar made from bronze. Wasn't there? And they would carry that also. They would cover it over also. So that's what Kahat had the job of carrying all these different vessels and in the temple. And Gershon, he carried all the curtains and the veils and this. That's what he carried. That was Gershon. And Mirori, he's going to carry all the posts, the walls, the big boards that were made up the walls of this. That's what he's going to carry. Okay, so I'd like to look. This is how they camped in the desert, right? So just remember this picture. At least remember there is a picture as much as possible. This is where Yehuda camped, where corresponding to Moses and Aaron. That was the entrance of the tabernacle, and there was curtains all around, right? That was the outer courtyard, and there was a big altar here. I don't know why they didn't put the big altar over here. I don't know. Interesting. It's pretty accurate. I mean, I think they could put an altar. Maybe ran out of ink. I doubt it. Okay. So anyway, it should be here. And here is Ephraim. Ephraim is on the other side, and that's where Gershon. That's what we're going to talk about today. And here we have the Shimon and Kahat, right? Shimon and the tribe of Levi, Kahat. That's where Korach came from. And it says that he got the whole tribe of Shimon to go with him. It says because he had bad neighbors. They were bad neighbors. They were neighbors one to the other. Woe to Russia, or the Shechino. It says woe to. Okay, let's talk about more positive things here. We got, just to remember, this is how they camped out. And we had the numbers. Remember, we had all the numbers. If you have any doubts, you can look this up. Somewhere you can see how many numbers there were. In Reuven, there was 46,000, 59,000. There was Gad and Yehuda, and et cetera, and et cetera. And it made all together 600 and 3,550 non-Levites. Non-Levites. And when you count the Levites, they counted them a little bit differently. The Levites, they counted from 1 month old and up. And the reason for that was very simple, that the Levites, they were holy even in the womb. The Levites, they were holy even in the womb. And the reason they waited for 1 month was to see that if it would be a viable child. If a child lives for 1 month, then they know that the child is a viable living child. He's going to continue to live in a normal sense. But if not, then he wasn't sort of really born until he was 1 month old. But as far as working in the Holy Temple, they only worked from the age of 30 years up. So we're going to see. The Levites, we're talking about the Levites. They did all the work in the temple, right? The Levites. And of course, Moses and Aaron. And I'm sorry, not Moses and Aaron. Aaron. He was the Kohen and his 2 sons. So let's go. Okay, let's go. So this week's Torah portion talks about what Gershon gets. Gershon has to carry the curtains. But before that, let's take a little peek at what Kahat did, because that was spoken about last week's Torah portion, and they were sort of the main ones, and this is a bit strange. So let's have a look. Let's have a look and see what they did. 1 second. Let's see if I can do this here. 1 second. I hope this works. Oh, there we go. Okay, this is the end of. No, that's not right. To do like this. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. This is right. This is a. No, press the wrong one. Here we go. Okay, this is the end of last week. We really should have done this last week, but we didn't, so it's never too late. We're going to do it this week. Here we go. Okay, so those who come in late, this is not this week's Torah portion. This is the end of last week's Torah portion, but it's beginning the topic of this week's Torah portion, namely the job of each and every one of the families of the Levites. Kahat is last week. This week we're talking about Gershon and Mirori. Here we go. Mirori. Vaydaber Hashem Moshe ve'el Aaron lemor. We'll do this a little bit quickly, a little bit. Nasoed Rosh B'nei Kahat, appoint the numbers of the family of Kahat. Mitoch B'nei Levi, take them from the Levites. L'mishpachatam lebeit avotam, according to their father's home, according to the father. So it says, Rashi says, Mana me'em et ru'im lavod et masa. He picked from them, Rashi says, he picked from them those who were strong enough to carry. Who are they? 30 years old until 50 years old. Ba'pachot mishloshim, less than 30 years old, didn't have full power. Remember, we said that 13 years old, ben shloshim lekoach. That's what it says in Pirkei Avot. We'll learn. V'hayoter al ben chamishim, and a person who's more than 50 years old, as he gets weaker and weaker, because they had to carry. Okay, mi ben shloshim shana u'mayla, from 30 years old and up. Ad ben chamishim shana until 50 years old. Kol haba l'tzava, anyone who comes in the group in the tzava, means like the how do you say, appointed armies, hosts. Lasod malacha ba'ohel moed, to do the work in the ohel moed. Ohel moed is what we call the holy in this case. It says la'asot malacha, to do work. Over here, it says, HaChaim points out that this is, B'nai Gershon is a little bit different. B'nai Kahat is different from B'nai Gershon Mirori. Why? Because by them, it says they work. And here it says, the Omar, it says to do work. Lavod avoda lasod malacha. And here it doesn't say lasod malacha. 1 second. I'm sorry. It says, here it doesn't say lasot avodah. It says lasot avodat malacha. Why? They didn't have to work? He says, no. Ein b'chlalos ma'aseh kahat avodah, because Kahat, even though they were carrying these tremendously heavy things, but they didn't really have to work. Why? First of all, the ark, which must have been tremendously heavy because it was fairly large, it was like 6 feet by, what is it? 6 feet by 1.5 feet, something like that. By, let's see, 6 feet long. Is that right? 2.5, 1 feet, 3, a little bit more than 4 feet long, and like about 2 feet high and 2 feet deep, solid gold. And there were 2 boxes of solid gold. So it comes out to be very, very heavy. Somebody once made a calculation, and it comes out to be very heavy. But it says, but they didn't have to carry it. Why not? Because the Aaron who Adarabba noseh, it says the Aaron would lift up those who carried it. The Aaron basically floated on its own. All you have to do is just work. But Aaron, also nearly, it seems to me, because they had to make the proper order and how they carry these things on their shoulders, and since that that they're walking was because of kavod Aaron aleim, and because they had the honor of the ark was on them, it was as though they were carrying, so to speak, God. Therefore, their work is called malacha, which is not the case by B'nai Gershon or B'nai Mirori. It's not called asot malacha. The other is not called doing malacha. Malacha means like you're accomplishing something, you're getting something done. Okay, how exactly did they carry the ark? You're not allowed to touch the ark. The ark is holy of holies. You're not even allowed to look at it. How could it be that they were? You can't go into the holy. You can't do it. So how could the Levites do it? And how did Aaron do it? So it says like this: Aaron and his sons, two sons, the other two sons got killed. So it's none of an Aaron and his two sons, when the camp traveled, and they would take the parochet, masach, they would take the veil that covered between the holy and the Holy of Holies, and they would cover with it the ark. Rashi said, every single vessel was put into its own like covering, and it's explained. So therefore the Levites, all they had to do was just lift it up. They didn't have to cover it. It says when the camp would go, this is when the cloud would go away. There was a big cloud that would cover them up. It surrounded them from all sides. So when it would move, so they would start moving with it. Okay, so later on we're going to say, it also says, and they put in the poles into the ark. But you can't say that they really put the poles in, that they were out, because it says, Lo Yasur Mimenu Lolam, the poles had to be there forever. So there were poles there, and they had to just sort of adjust them a little bit, but they covered them over. Okay, so now they covered over the ark so it couldn't be seen. And then they put on top of it a skin of tachash, a special skin that they had. This is not the same skins that covered over the tabernacle, because those are going to be carried. We're going to see by Gershon. They put on a special ore of tachash. Nobody knows exactly what a tachash was. It was some sort of an animal that only existed back then, a unicorn or a walrus. I don't know what it was. And then they put a special garment, precious garment of purple from above, and basamu badav, and they put the staves. And like I said, they didn't really put the staves in from the beginning. They just sort of adjusted them a bit. The Ramban says that because the ark was so precious, so they didn't want to see the or tachash, but they would cover. So they would first of all cover the ark over with the curtain that was separating between the holy and the holy. Then they would put this skin of this tachash thing, whatever it was, this tachash, a unicorn or a race, I don't know, on top of it. And then they would cover over that again. We'll see. They would cover over again with a blue covering. They would put the or tachash. Why would they put this tachash? Because it was made of skin, animal skin, and it would protect the ark from the rain. And then they would put on top of the whole thing this blue or turquoise or purple, whatever it is, garment that you could see because this was like a very glorious and beautiful cloth that they would put on top of it. It was the color of the heaven. But all the other vessels, we'll see, and the menorah and the other two altars, as you could see from above, the covering of this tachash, this whatever it is, unicorn skin, whatever it is. There's different artists' imaginary views of what this thing was. Okay, so let's see. So in other words, they would go in and cover it. I don't know if they would go in walking backwards or forwards, but they would go in any case, they wouldn't look at the ark. They would put over this covering, and then they would put another covering of the tachash on that, and they would put a third covering over it, covering of this blue covering. Okay, on the shulchan hapanim, where the bread was, they would also put a blue cloth, and on top of that, they would put all the vessels that were used in this thing, and the bread, the constant bread, would also be there, as well. These are all the tools that were used with it in order to clean the bread off and to move the bread and to clean the plates off and things like this. Then they would put on top of this a garment of tolat shani, some sort of a silk garment, and they would cover it over with this or tachash, and they would put the poles into this is the face bread. Then they would take a blue garment and they would cover over the menorah and its coverings and etc. Then they would put all of its vessels, a Tachas. So the Tachas would go on top of all the other vessels, and including the ark, it would go on top of. But the ark was the only one that on top of this Tachas, they would also put a blue garment, right? And then it says on the golden altar, they would do the same thing, and they would take all these vessels and clean out the menorah. This was all the work of Aaron. This was all the work, of the tribe of Kahat. And that's why it says God said to them that the tribe of Kahat should not be cut off among the Jews. Why? Because they were always carrying the ark, and anyone who touched the ark says, Al tigru mutu, don't, you have to watch out that they don't die. This is what you have to do, that they will live and they won't die. When they come into the Holy of Holies, Aaron and his sons, they will go first, and they will go first, and they will cover over the holy ark. And they won't see the ark when it's inside of its covering that was put over on the top of it. Only Aaron, he would see it. So that's what we were saying before. Okay, that ends today's, and that ends the preparation for today's lesson. That's the end of last week's lesson. Now let's go to this week's lesson. Here we go. Now we're going to start this week. I lost it. Okay. Nish plan for fallen. What is it? Oh, here we go. No, I'm sorry. Let's do this again. Stop the share. Start the share. Here we go. Good. All right, now we're reading this week's Torah reading. Vayadaber Hashem Moshe, God spoke to Moses. Yes. Saying, all right, we finished with Kahat. Now we're going to do ready? Sorry. Nosei et Rosh B'nei Gershon, appoint the numbers of the family of Gershon also. Leveit avotam l'mishpachotam, according to their families. Says Rashi, just like I commanded you about Kahat, and you should see how many people there are that reach the ability to work, namely from 30 years and up. We already counted them. How many there are from 1 month up. Now we're going to count them from 30 years old and up. Mi ben shloshim shana v'mayla, from 30 years old and up. Ad ben chamishim shana until 50 years old. Tivkod otam, you should appoint them. Kol haba litzvot tzava lavod avodah b'Yisrael, in order all those that were able-bodied that can do work, pick them. Said the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, and B'nai Kahat, it doesn't say litzvot tzava, it just said, where is it? B'nai Kahat said litzvot tzava. Why? Because the Kahat, the family of Kahat, they were carrying the holy vessels from the inside of the tabernacle. Therefore, they're called hosts. They're called like the real soldiers, the real workers, which is not the case. These other families, like Gershon, these are things that cover over the holy, so to speak. They gather the holy. They carry the curtains, or in the case of Mirori, they carry the boards. Therefore, it says litzvot tzava. They gather up these things that are used to work to serve Hashem. This is the service of B'nai Gershoni. What they have to do, la'avod l'masa, to work and to carry. The Sifrono says, Lavo, to work, that's when we camp. They had to assemble the whole thing. Ulamasan, to carry, that's when they were traveling. Because above, when it said Mishmer B'nei Gershon, but Oel Moed, that's talking about what they did when they were camping. Here it's talking about what they would do before they would start to travel. What would they take? They would take the Uriot. Now, what is the meaning of this to us today? That's what we're learning in Chassidut in the morning. He asked that question also. We come to Chassidut class in the morning, and he'll explain what this is relevant, this 3,300 plus year old story that happened only one time anyway, in the history of Judaism. What's this got to do to us today? He explains. So come to class in the morning. The Nazir, what do they carry? They carry Yuriosa Mishkan, the curtains of the tabernacle, that Oel Moed, and the curtains of the tent of meeting, Michseu Atachash Asher Alav Milmaila, its covering and the covering of the Tachash, which was on top of this also, the same Tachash, the same material or skin, whatever that they put on the vessels. They also covered over the ark, the tabernacle. And also the covering of the Pesach Ohel Moed. I don't think we have a picture of this, but here we have, this is what's called the Tentachtonos. How did it work in the tabernacle? The tabernacle was like a rectangular, like, let's say 4 walls. One of those walls was almost totally open, 4 walls, and no top. What was on the top? So it said on the top, they put these, I mean, I have a picture of it here. I don't know if you'll be able to see the picture. These usually don't come out so well. Anyway, let's see, just at least you know that there is such a thing. Here we go, look. Here, see? You see this? Well, I have to make it bigger here. Oh. Nice big picture there. No, that's it. Okay, ready? Picture. Here's the picture. You see this? That's terrible. 1 second. There we go. Picture. This picture that we see here, this is a picture of the tabernacle. Tabernacle. Right? Here's the Holy of Holies. 1/3 of it was Holy of Holies, and 2/3 of it was here's the candelabra was here, etc. That, okay, here's the Holy of Holies, here's the Holy. So on top of it, it was open on the top, right? So what did they have to cover it over? They had these tapestries that they put on the top, and these tapestries would fold over on the sides. So it was bigger than the top. Right? It was bigger than the top. This was, yeah. Right. So it was, there we go. Oh. So these tapestries were bigger. They would flip over. These tapestries over here, these covered over the backside as well. Good. On top of these, so these would cover over. This we're looking, this is sort of transparent here. These should be covering over the top. So they were transparent. We're looking through. In reality, they weren't transparent, of course. So this is how it would look from the top. If you just saw the top, it would look like this, but it would be much smaller because these sides here, they draped over. And then on top of that, they would put this or tachash and other things they would put on top of it. Those were the curtains that, so these are the lower ones. These are called the lower ones. And on top of that, I'm moving all around over here. These are called the lower ones. And on top of these, they would put the skin of these animals and etc. that they would cover it over. And all that business, the sons of Kahat, of Gershon would carry the whole thing. When you see Uriasa Mishkan as Oel Moed, they would carry the curtains what is it? The tapestries that covered over the Mishkan, and the covering, the tachash that was on top of it, and the Mesach, Pasach, Ohel Moed, and also the covering of the opening of the Ohel Moed. That's this thing here. Let's see, do we still have the picture over here? Oh, see, here there was a covering over. This was the entrance, and it would be covered. So you couldn't see inside. You couldn't look inside. Okay. That's what they would carry. That's kalei chatzer, and the curtains of the yard. That's masach pesach hashar, and also the entrance of the yard. I don't know if you can see this if I just flipped from one picture to the other. So here I just flip like this. Here, watch this. Here we go. So they carried then these curtains here. Can I make this bigger? I hope so. 1 second. All right, I don't know. Anyway, these curtains here they carried, and the curtains that covered over the, and also there was a curtain that covered over the front. They would carry that also. That's what it's referring to. Al pi Aaron, according to the directions of Aaron. I'm sorry. Yes, the avadu, it says avadu that they should work. Avadu, when should they work it? Oh, the whole thing was talking about work. So he's telling, this is the Safrono. He says when the Jews would camp. When the Jews would camp, so their job was that they had to protect all of these vessels that were there in order that they would be able to work properly. All these accoutrements and these little tools that were used to pound in the pegs of the tents and things like that, they had to watch out. Okay, according to the directions of Aaron and his sons will be all the service of the Gershon, all their carryings and everything, and the Aaron would command them what to do. He would tell them what to do. Ezem Yabanim, who was the one that would say it? This is Biad Itamar ben Aaron Kohen. Itamar, the son of Aaron, he was the one that would tell them what to do. This is the service of the tribe of the family of Gershon and the Ohel Moed, and what they would do in the hands of Itamar ben Aaron Kohen. Like I said, it was Elazar and Itamar, and the other two sons, not of an Avihu, they died. And now we have the sons of Mirori. That's the last ones. And what did they carry? Like we said before, they had the boards and these poles that held up the outer the curtains around the outer courtyard. Let me just do this again here. I hope you can see this, but if not, here's the outer courtyard, and there were poles that had to carry. Over here also it was sort of like an opening. There was one curtain that covered over here, and then people were going through this curtain if they wanted to go into the outer. So anyway, they would carry all of the poles that held us up, and also the boards that constituted the tabernacle. From 30 years up to 50 years up, they would do the carrying. This is what they would do. The boards of the tabernacle. It's the bolts that held it together, and the poles and the sockets that they had underneath that held these boards up, and also all of the pillars of this big outer courtyard, and also the sockets and things that held them up. They had to carry them also. And this is the service of Mirori. Just one moment. Okay, that's right. Karshia Mishkan. There it goes. The big boards that constituted the tabernacle. They were tremendously heavy, and they had wagons that carried. Now, interesting enough, Mirori and Gershon, they had wagons to carry their things with, and Kahat didn't. Kahat carried everything on their shoulders. They carried it all on their shoulder. This is the service of Mirori. So Moses and Aaron and all, they told the Kahat and the family of what to do, because Moses and Aaron also came from Kahat. From 30 years up until 50 years up, from 30 to 50, they came to work. And what should they do? How many were there? They counted them. 2,750. These are the number of the family of Kahat that worked on the Oel Moed, etc., etc. And tomorrow we're going to continue learning. God willing, we'll start getting to also he evicts all the impure people from the holy temple, from the camp. And then we have the commandment, the bizarre commandment of the Sota. And we'll try to get into this, at least to begin, the commandment of the Sota, a little bit of explanations from the HaChaim, HaKadosh, and others about a little bit of an inside look at this. Have a good day with Mashiach now. Oh, we were supposed to do Pirkei Avot. Oh, I forgot. Here, let's do Pirkei Avot. Ready? Yes. 1 minute.